Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to OSW Daily Livestream. I am your host, Steve Todd. I'm the founder of Open Source Workplace. I'm Global Head of Workplace at NASDAQ, and we have my distinguished co-host, DJ
Distinguished in
Mike
what way?
Petresky. Sorry?
I'm not sure what that could mean. A lot of things.
It's a
Distinguished in
good
what
thing.
way?
It's a good thing, man. It's a good thing. It's a good
Not for
thing.
my education or my expertise by any means,
Come
but
on, that's the reason why you're here, because your expertise, man.
my hair, maybe distinguished because of
Uh,
my hair.
you certainly are distinguished with your hair, and we have some images of your hair for going back a couple of months that shows that it is distinguished and sometimes not so distinguished.
Great, the
But
great
yes,
quarantine hairstyle will forever live
absolutely,
in the annals of
absolutely,
history.
absolutely,
How are you
absolutely.
today, my friend?
I'm doing really well, mate. Doing really well, feeling good. Been out, got my run in. Beautiful sunrise as I was out running. What about you? How are you feeling?
I got up 5 minutes ago. Took a quick shower.
That's why you look
Barely
so distinguished.
dried my hair, and that's why I am looking the distinguished way I do. That's the difference between you and me. But it brings two perspectives to this daily discussion
certainly
around
does. It certainly
workplace
does.
and real estate and facility management and people. We like to focus on the
People.
people, Steve.
I love
Don't we?
it. I love that. I love that. Yes, yes, we do. We do. And we're going to talk about people today because I think there's some of the headlines, some of the articles we've looked at, and I'm going to pull up here the what our agenda is today. You know, Google announced, and we're going to dig into what Google announced yesterday about working from home. Also, a Wall Street Journal article that you shared, which was fantastic. This shows, when people have the choice of where to live, where to work, then they make big decisions on where they want to live. Then we have an article which was based on a interview I did with Luke Camperman on workplace of the future and how he thinks it should be based on outcomes, which is going to be great. And then
Yep.
finally, this was a video from a recent event for a lot of CIOs. So this is a CIO from Belkin, from Zoom, head of technology for McKinsey, and basically them coming together to evaluate what do they think the workplace is going to be from a technology perspective, past, present, and future. So we're going to take a few snippets of what they discuss. But Mike, I mean, I saw this headline yesterday, and to be honest, I first heard it from a colleague. What Google announced yesterday, they're going to let me just make sure I pull up the right article
Yeah.
here if
Do
I
it.
have it here. I've just gone through this and I'm going, I don't think I have it here.
Well, it's
No,
okay to just talk about it. The
it
the
is. It
Google
is.
article is about the fact that they've extended work from home until a year from now,
July
July of
2021. Yeah,
2021.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what was your reaction when you heard it from a friend?
I was a little shocked, to be honest. I have to say. First thing that went through my head, to be honest, is what would be the basis of the decision? That affects 200,000 people. Whenever you then read the article, and I went sort of digging a little bit more, I seen that the position was, well, they're thinking about their employees, right? So
Yep.
the employees know that for the next 12 months, that we're going to work from home. You can make decisions about your children's school life. You can make decisions about leasing,
Yeah.
property, and you can make life-changing decisions because you have that little bit of time. If for the next 12 months you can make a choice about where you live. You wanted to try something. You're in a city and you're in a one-bedroom apartment, two-bedroom apartment, whatever it is you're sharing. Do you then take this opportunity to make a decision to try something different, to see how you feel about it and do things like that? So I saw it from that perspective, but
Right.
it's really surprised me. It really did surprise me. And then the other side of it is it's like, well, they have access to quite a wee bit of data, Google. Are they looking and seeing things in the data? Are they seeing migration patterns? Are they seeing something else, search parameters that sort of giving them indications
Oh,
about what people are
maybe.
thinking? I just don't know. What what
Yeah,
what
no,
what,
my
what went through
my
your
my
head?
thought was the same as yours.
Yeah.
Don't want me to cut you off, but
No, no,
the
fine.
idea being we do that well, don't we? Cut each
We
other off.
we
That's
do,
what we
we
do.
do. That's
It's a
okay.
conversation, right? It's not a presentation. So you're on all the things that I kind of picked up from the article as well. And for those that can see it, I'm sure you've got the link below
Yep.
to check it out yourself. But my first thought was, why make this decision? We don't know enough about the future. We've cautioned here about workplace leaders making dramatic decisions about redesigning spaces or changing real estate, based on near-term trends. But now that we're getting into this kind of longer-term situation where we understand the virus is with us for a long time to come, and people are being productive, remote working, I can see now cautiously moving forward with decision making. We talked about how I don't envy those that have to make big decisions around real estate portfolios and so forth. But here, Google and some other tech companies are making these kind of bold announcements, right, about, working from home permanently, or it'll be your choice, or it will be, through July 2021, as Google just said. And you dig deeper, and you've taught me to think, Steve. You've taught me to be a thinker here. Why say these things? And you might be onto something. They see the war for talent, especially in this world of technology, white collar jobs, the people that have been successful transitioning to, working from home. And that's what we have to kind of make a distinction here for anybody watching who is out of work or is in an industry that is not able to work remotely, and they're desperate to get back to an office, or they're desperate to get back into their reopened workplace, whatever that might be. Certainly workplaces are it's a broad term, and it could mean universities, it could mean restaurants, it could mean retail, it could mean all kinds of things. But for us, the corporate real estate world is what we tend to focus on, because that's where Steve and I operate. And knowledge workers. So knowledge workers have been the most successful, I would say, in making this transition during the pandemic. And of those knowledge workers, if you take this broader audience of just knowledge workers, the ones in the technology space, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Googles, the people who work in this internet, existence, the virtual world already, they're most positioned already to do this. So I'm wondering if these decisions, certainly they're self-serving in a way because it doesn't matter so much, and if they encourage others to stay home longer, sometimes it does benefit their business. Like Facebook certainly benefits if more of us are at home and have access to our Facebook accounts. But besides the cynical side of me, and the one that you've taught me to think things through that way, just the idea that they framed it the way they did, that this allows people, by making an announcement now and saying we're going to be doing this for another year at least, it gives people a chance to maybe sign a 12-month lease or move to another area and make decisions around school or family decisions. So if that's the motivation, then that's great. And maybe that is the motivation, and it's driven by this war for talent that still exists, even if we have a lot of unemployment and a recession in the economy overall. In these particular spaces, they're booming in a lot of ways, and that talent war continues on.
Yeah, and one of the other things that sort of goes through my head is the amount of time and energy and effort that needs to go in from senior management, leadership, HR, legal people, internal communications, training staff. When you reopen, the amount of things you need to go through to actually open an office that may not be fully occupied, that takes such a time consumption of many people. Making this decision just eliminates all that, and then they can focus on their core jobs and evaluate really what are the things we need to be doing as a business to help grow the business, rather than trying to navigate through opening offices. I think that's one thing that they could be thinking of as well. But the other thing that goes through my head is like, how will this impact how other leaders think about opening their offices? And that's the bit that we don't know. I am sure at executive levels, real estate, I know within my networks, I'm sure you're within your networks as well. This is a conversation that you heard yesterday, something that we're going to hear over the next couple of days. It's going to be talked about through many publications and many forums, webinars, and so on and so forth. And it really is, they have been pioneers, along with other organizations, and how they construct workplace, how they design workplace, the perks that they put in their office space. And therefore, what impact is that going to have on other people's decisions? Are executives going to be second guessing what they're thinking and how they're going to react to this stuff? So it's going to be fascinating to see how all that unfolds.
What was the big kind of catchphrase in our industry over the last several years when people talked about those amenities and those redesigns and those kind of dramatic changes to the workplace? It was, we're not Google. And many organizations would say, we're not Google, so we're not going to do that this, or we're not have slides in our office and what have you. So maybe this is another opportunity to say, we're not Google. We're going to let them do what they do. And some will take that as an indication of, hey, we need to be thinking about this. But others will say, we're not Google and we don't need to. Just to bring it full circle, I had a guest on, Arnold Levin from Gensler, early in the year, one of my most popular podcast episodes back in the beginning of January. It was a two-parter. And he did caution, as a design architect, strategist, person who's been in this industry for many, many decades, that many of his big clients for years and years were saying, we're not Google, when he would bring ideas to the table that seemed to sound like they were those Google innovations. Mm-hmm. And then in these recent years, those companies found Google entering their marketplace and also trying to attract the same talent that they were trying to attract. Yeah. So that war for talent made people reconsider that phrase, we're not Google, and we're saying, maybe we are Google, because now we're competing with them.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Fascinating. I think this conversation is going to go on, and I'm sure over the next few days we'll see and we'll hear a lot more content, and I'm sure it'll come up later during your live stream.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, there's another article you're going to bring up that is really going to help me on today's live stream. So
this is what I just brought up. Going. I just brought it up. So when workers can live anywhere, many ask, where do I live? And this is a Wall Street Journal article, as mentioned before. And we pulled up 6 cities: New York City, San Francisco, Denver, Seattle. You can see it on the screen. Fascinating, though, whenever you see 7.3% of New Yorkers relocating, 10.4% in San Francisco, 6.9% in Denver. That surprised me. Now, over the last few weeks, probably the last 10 days actually, we've talked about a number of key benchmarks that actually we don't know what the future looks like. We don't know who's going to live where or where people are going to reside in the future. But actually, there are kind of trends we can look at, right? We've talked about leasing, what is the actual year-over-year leasing rates, and we've seen reductions in some of these big markets. What is the absorption rate of actual office occupancy, right? We spoke the other day about 5 million less square feet year to date in New York, and now we've got this where Wall Street Journal are illustrating actually people are migrating from these big cities, and they're demonstrating where they're moving to. Now, in most instances, I think it's fair to say, probably with the exception of New York City and Chicago, the people seem to be moving out of the big cities and into the suburbs in close proximity, where in San Francisco or New York and Chicago, they seem to be migrating to Florida. It looks like a lot of it.
That's the place to go.
That's the place to go. Where San Francisco, it's very close to still being in San Francisco. A lot of it, Sacramento's been one, Oakland's been another. Denver's just all over the place. But I just find it really interesting whenever we start putting these different pieces together. And this migration's only really just started because if we think about it, people have only had the freedom to move from these locations over the last couple of months because of lockdown and so on and so forth, especially in New York City. So I wonder whenever this gets updated, 2-3 months from now, will we actually see a bigger migration?
Yeah, for those curious, the data, I was curious where the data came from. It was from a company that tracks mobile cell phone usage, which is fascinating to me that a lot of these reports around how effective the lockdowns were based on these tracking of our mobile phones. And anybody who has moved away from an area for more than 3 weeks are the ones that were counted in this as relocated, at least temporarily. And that could be a long vacation. It could be visiting a vacation home. It could be a lot of New Yorkers are pretty well off. They have second homes in Florida and outside the area, and they took the opportunity to live the quarantine during this pandemic in those areas. So is it a permanent shift? We'll see. But the question that came up in the article, Steve, and I want to ask you, because I asked myself the question, I was a remote worker before the pandemic. So I live here in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. For those that don't know, I live out by Dulles Airport, about 20 miles west of the nation's capital. Anybody who's visited this area has flown into Dulles International Airport. You've probably flown over my house, and thank you for making that noise. But the other piece of this question was, where would you live if you could choose to live anywhere? If you could take your job and work the way you work now, but do it anywhere, regardless of location. I heard the term the other day on my live stream. A guest of mine, Darren Canthal, said the term he heard is geo-agnostic. If we're going to be geo-agnostic about work, employers and employees, what would you choose? So the article in Wall Street Journal says, where would you choose, Steve? I have to answer my question myself first and say, I live here. I live in a very expensive area. DC is not as expensive as New York or San Francisco, but it's up there. There are suburbs around this area that are very, you don't get much house for what you would get, say, in other parts of the country. And, generally things are more expensive here. But I choose to live here, even though I could literally choose to live anywhere, because I love access to the city. I'm a big Washington Nationals baseball fan, sports fan. I love events. I love, the arts, theater, being able to go to concerts and so forth. These are all things that we used to love. Being around a big city, all those things that you hear about that attract you to a big city. That's why I live near a big city. I want to have access to those things. And I also have family in the area. So those things, if I could work anywhere, and now that the things that used to attract me to a big city are less important, certainly with concerts not being part of our pandemic life, would I change? Would I move? At least in the near term, the answer is no, I wouldn't. So how about you, Steve? If you could move anywhere or live anywhere, where would it be?
It's a tough one for me. I love being close to New York. I love the summer in New York, and I love the fall in New York. I hate winter. I detest winter. I lived in the UK for so long. It's miserable. I just don't like it. So
Yeah.
I actually think in the short term, I would probably try and split time if I was given the freedom. Split time between, New York, almost like, those snowbirds.
Yeah.
But whether I'd go to South Florida, Austin would probably be somewhere that would be kind of interesting to me. I've always been fascinated with Denver, but again, the time, if I'm going to split between the seasons, I don't think the winter winter in Denver
escaping the
would
cold.
work. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
love Denver and the surrounding areas in the summer months. But so I have to think probably somewhere Florida or Austin would be sort of something of mine, be my cup of tea. And Austin, just because one, it's beautiful. There's great life, social life, concerts, great cycling, and you could probably get more bang for your buck. So that would sort of be where would sort of perk me up. But I think if I was going to relocate permanently, Austin would probably be the one area that would be interesting to me. I've been there. I'd like to go back several times more to sort of feel it out.
Yep.
But that's
Yeah, I visited
kinda
as
where
well. It's a weird town, as they like to
it's
call
great.
themselves.
It's like
but really
so different,
incredible,
so different to every
culture
other.
and
yeah.
again, the concerts and
Yeah.
South by Southwest, all those things. But that's
Yeah.
the stuff that's not going on now. So that's why
Right.
you're staying put in the suburbs of on Long Island, New York City, and there's no urgency in your mind, I don't imagine, to pick up and
No,
change right
no.
now, right? Because
No.
we may have fantasies about wanting to work somewhere else or live somewhere else, but in this pandemic existence, the things that attract us to cities or attract us to another non-city are not really around anymore. So
Yeah.
again, making rush decisions or rash decisions and moving, picking up your house and moving is not something that interests me. And I'm not sure how permanent this data will be.
Yeah, and sort of, I also think as well, if I knew for the next 12, 18 months, whatever it was, that, NASDAQ weren't going to open our offices and so on and so forth, and we're going to be remote, or we're going to do whatever it is we're going to do, I may go, it may be worth buying an RV and just driving around, seeing this beautiful country. There's,
Yeah,
there's
there you go.
there's very little that I've seen in the US, and there's so many places I'd love to see. And I could take that opportunity with, good Wi-Fi and good camera studio
Sure.
set up. We could do this from wherever,
Absolutely.
And,
Every morning we check
every
in
morning.
and
I go,
where in the world
where
is
is he? Where's Steve
Steve
today?
Todd?
So
That'd be awesome.
So there's so many things to do, and I just also think about that then, being able to, interview people in an environment, in their own environment, going to do whatever it is, but again, these are just things that sort of we just have to think about. But
I got a new hashtag for you, Steve.
Go on.
Hashtag OSW road trip. OSW road trip.
That would be kind of
So
cool.
let's do it.
That would be kind of cool. But yeah, so we'll see. But I think it's really interesting. I think we just have to keep track of all these indicators, keep ourselves informed, to sort of, because we don't know what the future of our offices are going to be. And this is not to say that our offices will disappear. They won't disappear. Absolutely will not. They will change in what their function is, I believe. But we just got to keep track of where people want to be and how we're going to manage that in the future. And that sort of nicely segues into the third article we want to talk about. And this is
It
why
does.
future space should focus on outcomes. And this was based on an interview, as I mentioned earlier, that I did with Luke Camperman. Luke's a great guy. He's a great sounding board, great mind. He's worked in Europe, he's worked in Australia, he's now in the US for a number of years, working with organizations predominantly on change management and sort of evaluating workplace, workspace, how people work, aligning it with their strategy, and then help design a process and workplace that actually allows them to maximize what it is they want to do, but all based on outcomes. So what outcomes do you want to deliver as an organization? How do you structure workplace, where people work, what they do, to deliver those? And this is a great article, and I love it. Just the very last sentence again, and you mentioned it earlier, Mike. We like to talk about people. Everything's focused on
Yeah.
people,
Right.
and this is where Luke sort of finishes with. He says, we need to focus on people. If we focus on people and the outcomes that they need to deliver, then from there you're able to then tie that into what the organization gets, how the structure, the culture, how to create a culture, be it in an office, be it in wherever people are working. And I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, this is the one that I wanted to refer to because today's episode of the Workplace Innovator Interactive live stream features two change management experts experienced in change management communications, and that's the topic: change management and communications during uncertain times. Obviously, it's an important subject, and I'm fascinated by this article. I'm glad you shared it. It helped me kind of set my mind for today's conversation. At noon Eastern, folks, go to workplaceinnovator.com if you ever want to join us and be a part of that interactive discussion. It's something that we really enjoy doing every Wednesday. But Steve, the question, and since you are the one who interviewed Luke, it kept saying that activity-based working is a great tool for change management. And I have an understanding of activity-based working being that it's a way to design spaces, offices, to allow for different types of spaces, for different types of work. Throughout a day, people have some time for head down work. They have time for collaboration, ideation, creativity, working with their colleagues and so forth. So there's been a movement for a long time, Andrew Mawson among others, that share their expertise around pushing organizations to rethink and reimagine workplaces to be more activity-based, to therefore allow workers to be their best selves and be the most productive they can be and be flexible in the way they get to do their work. And remote can be part of that as well, and working from home on certain days of the week. So how does that help change management? Because here we are going into a conversation about change management and communication. Help me out. How can I use this as a springboard into my conversation on the live stream today?
No, it's a great question. So whenever you think about organizations want to go from where they are today to deliver an outcome, be it 3, 6, 12 months, whatever it is, and whatever they need to structure, right? So there is a process of evaluating what people do today, where they work, their culture, their processes, how they operate, and you identify how do you go from A to B. And A to B may change. There may be multiple things that change and things that don't change. That change management process is allowing you to go from what you believe is going to be the outcomes, or the process to deliver those outcomes, and the change management is how you work that through, right? So the benefit, I believe, in working through activity-based working is you have to get to such a deep level of understanding of what everybody does, but also aligning what everybody does to the corporate objectives. So this is every line management, every team management, every department, every product. All processes get reviewed, what people will do, how they do it, where they do it, and when they do it, to deliver those outcomes. And it is a complete transition. Whenever you're designing an office space and you're trying to understand how people operate, to deliver activity-based working well, you have to go to a much deeper understanding. And I think it helps deliver. But also, whenever you see an office that is designed with activity-based working, you will never see another office that looks the same way, because no other office operates that way either. But getting back and tying it into the change management process, you have to do that work then understand what you need to deliver in that change management process is the training, the knowledge sharing, and adapting the culture to allow that transition to take place. And
I see.
and
I see.
communication is a huge element of it, because you have to teach people, okay, this is where you are today, this is how you do this today, how do you do it tomorrow, and what is that process that we need to do it. And also, whenever you start with the employee, you then bring the employee into the process. They feel like they're part of the process, and then also they feel then that they can also be part of that change process to actually benefit. Because in essence, what you want often is the employee who knows the best way or the shortcut to deliver an outcome, because they
Right.
just know how to navigate things. And COVID's taught us that actually a lot of the processes that we had to do before actually were really probably not adding a lot of value, but we did them because we had to. This has allowed us to eliminate a lot of those inefficient processes and cut to the chase to deliver certain things. I
That's
hope
great.
that
No, that's
sort
really
of
helpful.
helps provide some sort of context.
It does, and it also explains why Luke was talking about using it as a tool to get us back to offices or the future of the office.
Yeah.
Because here we are. Let's talk about, in broad terms, the baseline is everyone now is right now working from home, and the question we've been asking here and others are asking themselves is why return to an office? And as far as that change management, communication, understanding employees, what they're doing well from home, what they are not able to do as well from home, and then taking that and shaping a workplace or an office setting that accommodates those needs in line with the broader outcome goals of the organization, and understanding the roles and responsibilities of each individual, and then making the office setting, the future of the workplace is going to be to fill in the gaps for the areas that we can't do well from our homes
Right.
or remotely
Right.
or in our isolated settings. So I think that's fantastic, and it really does tie together all these philosophical and strategic terms that I talk about so often. And I feel like I have a good understanding. I think my description close when I talked about activity-based
Yeah,
working
no, of
in
course,
a
of course.
broad sense, but then tying it all together in that red thread, right? We always talk about the red thread. How does it all connect with change management and communication? It all comes together with Steve Todd on the open sourced workplace. That's what it's all about, folks.
Yep. No. Thank you, Mike. And the last thing we want to talk about is, and we don't have to go into this too deeply. Just obviously we're very conscious of time, but this was a great webinar. And the first thing I want to sort of commend is Landmark, the CIO Summit. They had this summit. They then posted all their content on YouTube, so you can go watch the entire summit ungated. And you know me, Mike, and how I love ungated
You don't like
content.
gates. I
I
understand.
don't like gates. I like everything to be open, as you know, because I think a lot of these folks, they're here to share their information, share their knowledge, and then the more people that can access it, the better it is. And what they sort of run through was each of them looked at, okay, what is the past, what is the present, what do they believe is the future. And what I try to do is this is just a short snippet of the mind notes that I took from listening to what these guys said. And who are they? They're the CIO of Zoom, of Belkin, as I mentioned before, McKinsey, and there's one other that just I can't read the name of the title right now, so I apologize. But what's really interesting is they think about the future, right? It's management supervision has changed. We talked before about, we talked previously about how leadership has changed through this process, but also manager supervision. There are managers who like to be able to look at, feel a space, see what's there, be able to adapt to that, affect change within that environment, and they don't really have the ability to do that right now. There is with that it gives them uncertainty. Their deliverables hasn't changed, so how do they get control of that supervision? So how are they going to do that in the future? And that's going to be something that's really, really challenging. Learning, developing, training, all that is going to change, right? Because in essence, people learned on the job, sit beside people. Well, how do you do that today, right? Onboarding new employees, we've talked about this before. Onboarding is going to change, But then technology, how the adoption of technology. Every organization have found that actually those people and what these guys were saying was companies who had embraced technology transformation have benefited during COVID. Those that resisted have struggled. So whether you've as an organization, you'd move to cloud, this transition was really easy. If you had yet to move to a cloud-based software and programs, then actually you were probably going to really struggle through this process. So I encourage people to go listen, think your ideas, and I'm not sure if you've had the chance to listen to the video as yet, Mike, but I know I just sent you the information earlier this morning, so you may not have had the chance to.
But I was just, in the interest of time and keeping it brief, I did jump around a little bit to try to get a sense of what they were talking about. Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. I do encourage folks to check it out. I will watch it later, Steve, but the thing that I took away in one of the comments, I think it was from the gentleman from McKinsey, was the recognition of the fact that things that we've talked about here, that being online all the time is exhausting. It's stressful. It's not easy. And it's something that we all need to make sure we are taking care of our well-being, our mental health. He said that's going to be a key factor going forward in the future of work. And the role that managers and employers and leadership plays in making sure that in this new reality of virtual existence, which is definitely a more strenuous one in many ways and more difficult one, keeping the health and well-being of the workforce at top of mind in whatever decisions are being made is essential.
It is. So that was a lot that we got through there this morning, Mike. That was a lot.
That was great.
That was a lot.
Great job putting those articles together. I appreciate it.
Thank you as well.
Have a great day.
You too. Good luck with your live stream today.
Good to see you. Looking forward to the RV purchase. Let us know how that goes.
I sure will.
We'll take this show on the road.
There you go.
Let's do it.
All right, man. I will chat with you soon. Take care.